Let's bring in SABC News correspondent Rapelang now to give us a bit more clarity on this. Rapelang, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We know that it's not the first time the panel of elders of SADC are in the Kingdom of Lesotho. As we do a comparison of what they did the last time they were there, which was around last year, and what the mission is trying to establish this time around, what are the observations?
That is true, and good evening to our viewers. Yes, the panel received the mandate in Kinshasa. You remember South Africa has been the mediator in the process, but this time they handed over to the panel of elders to make sure that the process that started as early as 2014 is brought to conclusion. And as things stand, the bill is now with the legislators, which was a significant step, I think, for the side of Lesotho. That is the last stage, but now still more consultations needs to take place, more, I think, whittling of the omnibus bill to actually dissect it to an extent that it does not stand, it stands to the scrutiny of the judicial process. Remember, the same process was challenged and won in court, but ultimately it was brought back as it's in its original format, which would say it would be much easier for the process to get the approval of stamps. But of course, we'll never know what happens with Parliament once it really gets to where it is discussed and whittled down permanently, properly. Then we will only know whether it will pass as it is. But we say it's a significant step until this point.
Yeah. And what are some of the dynamics that have been established on the ground as the elders come together and, of course, give some feedback on the process so far?
The reality is, you know, once you are in government, you start to realize how broad and wide the process is. The new government that only came into existence about 2 years ago had made a mandate that it will immediately pass the reform bills. But you know that once you are in a position of power, things look slightly different. So the opposition is overwhelmingly trying also to make sure that the process is passed, because when you are in the opposition, it looks like it favors you. Once you're in government, you look like some things take away power from you. So I think that is where it stands. One of the things that it wanted to challenge was because it makes it really not easy that the change of power happens as frequent. Like, it regulates how many floor crossing can happen. It regulates the extent of which the incumbent can appoint the security chiefs or the position of influence in government without proper consultation. And right now, the opposition had that particular beef that the government, amidst the restriction of the reforms, has continued to appoint to fill the positions that are of influence and power, and the opposition had a beef with that particular issue. But we think they can come to an understanding whereby this omnibus bill can actually pass, because it is only after it becomes law that certain parts can be amended, they can be arguments. But I think for the sake of continuity, this bill really needs to pass such that the process that took place over 10 years ago can actually come to some sort of a conclusion. We know the reforms cannot be as quick and as easy as that. Some countries have battled with it, but I really think Lesotho has gone a mile, and it would be to its advantage now to pass the omnibus bill in its current format.
As you talk about this process that's being over a decade long, ongoing, with really no finality, besides what you're talking about right now, that some strides have been made, which points to some positive progress. Would you say that right now SADC is at last able to flex its muscles in Lesotho and steer this process forward?
True. It is quite a complex process, because you can't just flex your muscles. There are pertinent issues that when you start to sit down and understand, you find the complexities. If you really try to squeeze and push it as it is, what recently happened is that it was challenged in court and they actually won, those who brought the challenge. So I think the process is really to try and nudge each other and find a common ground. But I really want to insist that now the process is in Parliament. From now, if it passes, it goes to the higher from the National Assemblies, and it goes to the upper house. And once it is approved at the upper house, it gets the King's assent. Then the bill would have passed. So that is why I insist this is the last mile. And I think this is where usually the hurdles really come into play. But I think if everybody can understand that there can never be a position or a point that you say everybody is satisfied, it meets the satisfaction of everyone's demands. There can never be such a position. But it would be smart and wise, I think, and exemplary to make this portion, make that commitment that the reforms bill in its current form passes, such that it can be scrutinized further, at least when it is already now a legislation.
What impact will the bill have in its approved state, and also just gauging some of the reaction from Lesotho?
It's a brilliant question. There was so much when they did the stakeholders, they went to the public to find how Lesotho would want it done. It would be a huge and humongous process, but it was whittled really into about 7 key pillars, which said reform the security, reform the judiciary, reform the media sector, reform the public service. These are the key pillars. It just came into 7, and it was then compacted into what is called the omnibus bill. Then this is the omnibus bill that we say, if it is passed, later on, perhaps those who feel like it can still be modified to meet certain needs, it can now still be discussed. But we say it is pertinent, it is key that this omnibus bill with the 7 key pillars, if it is passed as it is, it would really form and open up and close the long process that SADC has been into for the past 14 years. I think Lesotho would have done a good stride going forward.
Very well. Thank you so much for that. SABC News correspondent Rapelang Radebe joining us there for that breakdown as we take a look at SADC's intervention in Lesotho around the passing of this bill.